to our next episode of the Hormone Café. In this episode, we're going to talk about the power of listening to our body. In our current medical culture, actually most of us have never actually been taught how to listen to our bodies. We're just taught how to override them, how to take medication, how to push through. So we're really going to dig into how to listen to our bodies, and then I'm going to use a patient case example of something that was really, really powerful. So some examples, for example, of us kind of not listening to our bodies. One is pushing through exhaustion. If we're tired and if we're fatigued, a lot of us are in that really overachiever, high power, do a lot, do it all at once, do it all together. You can do it. You don't need to sleep a lot. And we just kind of push through exhaustion. But if we're constantly burning the candle at both ends, we're literally burning down our adrenal glands and burning off our hormones. So if we're fatigued, if we're tired, sometimes it's literally your body telling you need rest. We really legitimately need to focus on our sleep and have our rest and recovery days. Another example is ignoring our hunger cues or ignoring our gut cues. Sometimes in our kind of diet culture, we try a diet, try an elimination diet, try a Whole30, and we'll just do the whole protocol Whole30. We might not feel great on it, but we just kind of power through it because there's already a Whole30 protocol out there, for example. So another kind of thing that I see is we're ignoring our gut cues, our hunger cues, our stomach, that kind of a thing. And then we can move kind of into the extremes of exercising, right? Like we don't exercise at all. We continue to feel fatigued, or we're really over exercising. And that can also cause a lot of stress on our bodies. But we think that more is better, more exercise is better. Another thing that we do a lot is we normalize things. For example, you have painful cycles. Well, you've always had painful cycles ever since high school, so it must be normal, right? You have PMS symptoms, you're really irritable, or you have breast tenderness in your luteal phase, and you think, oh, well, doesn't everybody have that? And then the last thing I see sometimes is that we tend to power through a lot of things. Oh, my doctor gave me this medication. It's supposed to be good for me. I don't feel good on it, but I'm going to take it anyway. Okay. I hear that all the time. Oh, I had a friend and she started taking Clomid and she's feeling horrible on Clomid, and Clomid made her feel terrible, but she's going to take it because her doctor told her that it was good for her. But I have a rule with all of my patients. There is no powering through, okay? We think a medication is going to be good for you. We start you on that medication. If it's not good for you, we just learn that that's not the right thing for your body, okay? You stop that right away. You message me. We make a tweak right then and there. We do not power through. The number one rule is that we need to listen to our bodies, okay? The textbook isn't going to tell us what's good for you. Your body is going to tell you what's good for you, okay? Your body's always communicating, so we just have to learn how to pay attention to it. Your body will respond to things, and as we listen to it, then we're going to start seeing a lot of beneficial changes that we can make to help it. So things that we want to do is just notice patterns, okay? And one thing that can be really helpful is to document things. If you're a person who tends to be super busy and it's hard for you to write things down, you can always dictate things into your phone, but it's helpful to kind of keep track of data or keep track of your symptoms over time, because sometimes when we're on our period, for example, it's super, super painful, and then we get off of our period and it's not that painful anymore. And then we make a change, but we're not really sure if it's working. So it's helpful to write down exactly like how painful it was, how many ibuprofens we had to take, how long we had to take a heating pad, what did we feel like, so we can make sure that we really do notice and write down those patterns and then adjust based on feedback. Sometimes the feedback of our bodies takes a long time because a period only happens every once a month, right? So it takes a long time to get data. And other things are quicker. For example, if you eat something and you don't feel good on that, then that is a faster data point that you have. So it really is helpful to document things and write them down, how you feel and what was going on when you felt like that, so you can look back and we can make some changes over time. And that just not judging your body, just gently observing it over time can be really, really powerful. I want to tell you about a patient that I took care of, and this just kind of gives a great example of the power of really listening to our body. So my sweet patient, she was 32 years old. She came to me and she had had 2 miscarriages, and she and her husband are trying to get pregnant. And they had been trying for about 5 years. She had a positive pregnancy test the first month they started trying, and ended up being a miscarriage. And then she ended up having another positive pregnancy test right after that, and that was a miscarriage, and she has not been able to have a positive pregnancy test ever since. And she's a patient, she had really regular cycles, and she was ovulating, she was having fertile cervical mucus, but periods were really, really painful, so painful that she would have to go home from work, and they were extremely heavy. She was bleeding through 1 pad an hour for days, passing humongous clots, spotting before her cycle, and she had a history of having some autoimmune issues when she was a child, and that the autoimmune diseases ran in her family. When we did a workup on her, she ended up having a lot of autoimmune issues. For example, she had a positive ANA, which means she had a lot of autoimmune inflammation. She had Hashimoto's. And one thing that we think about when you have a lot of autoimmunity is, how are we going to decrease your inflammation? How are we going to do that from a diet standpoint, from a supplement standpoint, from a medication standpoint? And sometimes we want to do all the things at once to really bring down inflammation, especially people who have a lot of inflammation. So for example, we started her on steroids, but she really didn't feel good on steroids. Even a low dose prednisone gave her a ton of anxiety, and she had a really bad reaction. And she also didn't have a great reaction to low dose naltrexone. And she knew enough to message and say, okay, I'm not feeling good on prednisone. Do I keep going, and am I going to get used to it, or do I need to stop it? But if you're feeling anxiety on a medication, especially if it's something like a steroid, you definitely want to stop it. I mean, there are some medications that we take that our body does need to take a little time to get used to, but there are other medications that we should never feel bad on, okay? There's no powering through. So in addition to having autoimmune issues, including Hashimoto's thyroiditis, so she had a thyroid issue, she had really, really severe anemia because of all of the heavy bleeding. And she had to get multiple iron transfusions, and she kept having anemia. And she also had prediabetes. So in addition to working on her blood sugar, we put her on metformin, but she did not tolerate that well. So we really learned that she was super sensitive to medication. She couldn't have metformin. She didn't do well on ovulation medication. She didn't do well on steroids or low-dose naltrexone. So we discovered that she had something called MCAS, or mast cell activation syndrome, and that can often come with a triad. So in this particular case, she had really significant dysautonomia and hypermobility, which means she's just extremely sensitive. So it's really important that she was able to be aware of her body, to be able to give that feedback of, okay, I know that when you have prediabetes, the textbook says that you need to start on metformin, but I'm feeling horrible on this metformin, okay? We don't power through, and stop taking that and start over. And she also had a lot of gut issues, and she discovered when you tend to be a very sensitive person, oftentimes you're very sensitive to foods too. So it does take a lot of work to figure out like what foods can you have, because sometimes when we restrict something, for example, if we're taking out foods that cause a lot of gut inflammation, it can flare up other things. So for her, gluten was very inflammatory and dairy was very inflammatory. But when we cut out gluten and dairy, she ended up eating a lot of prohistamine foods. And when you have MCAS, sometimes you can also have a histamine sensitivity. So actually cutting out and being restrictive on those foods was making it way worse, because now she was eating all these histamine foods and she was having a humongous histamine flare and she was feeling terrible. So once we kind of learned about how sensitive her body is, we really went back to the basics, okay? So when you're talking about sensitivities and mast cell activation syndrome, number one, sometimes it can be helpful to literally stop all of your supplements and just do an audit of every single thing that you're putting into your body to make sure that you're not flaring from even something really basic. For example, sometimes if you're sensitive to peppermint, you can't even have peppermint tea or ginger tea or something like that. So we really just went back to the basics. We had her on and very basic diet where we had her on a few different foods that we knew she could tolerate and then she was going to feel good on. And then we built back up from there. Okay. Because the whole goal is not to be restrictive forever when we're talking about a diet, but sometimes we do have to go back to the basics, rebuild, add in things one at a time, document symptoms, because we want to make sure that we rebuilt up her gut microbiome with enough fiber, and we wanted to make sure she was getting her nutrition in, right? Like we needed to make sure she was getting enough fat, enough fiber, and enough protein. So we went down to the very, very basics of what she could tolerate, right? She could tolerate chicken. She could tolerate certain vegetables, but she couldn't tolerate others. And eventually we worked more and more and more things into her diet. So then she was on a low histamine diet and she continued to be gluten-free, but she was able to eat a humongous diversity of plants and fruits and vegetables and protein and fiber. So she went from having this horrible diarrhea and gas and bloating to be able to have a bowel movement every single day. Another thing that we learned is that all of her supplements have to be extremely, extremely basic. So when we talk about giving her iron for her anemia, she has to have the most pure form of iron ever because she was very, very sensitive to fillers. And we found out that she had to have the most pure compounded medications because she was very sensitive to some of the dyes and the fillers and the additives that you can get from a pharmaceutical medication. So we cut off all her supplements. We focused on diet first and then triggers. So obviously when you have MCAS and histamine, you need to avoid the triggers, right? You need to avoid your high histamine foods. You need to avoid dyes. You need to avoid any environmental allergens. Make sure you have really good filters. And then from there, you can go back into your ladder of adding back in supplements or even prescription medications to help decrease inflammation. So once we finally kind of got down to the basics, straightened out her diet, reintroduced some of those foods, we could start reintroducing some of her supplements. So for example, for her, it was helpful to be on quercetin because that's a really good mast cell stabilizer. And then we of course, had to focus on the basics, right? Like get her back into doing gentle exercise because she was so anemic and felt tired all the time. So we wanted to give her enough gentle exercise to help get good blood flow to her uterus and ovaries without exhausting her. So we started her on a basic diet, built back from there, found the most basic supplements, only what she needed, just a basic version of iron, and then really basic anti-inflammatory supplements. And then previously, we had tried something called tranexamic acid to help control her heavy bleeding, and she didn't do well on it. But then once her inflammation was under control, she was actually able to restart that medication and help with her heavy bleeding. So if we could get her heavy bleeding down, then she wouldn't be so anemic. She wouldn't have to take so much iron. She also ended up having surgery, so we removed a fibroid that she had that was causing her anemia, and we took out endometriosis. So that can be a great way. Of course, taking out endometriosis helps decrease the overall inflammation of your body, and then taking out fibroids prevents your body from having such heavy bleeding and being so anemic. And then previously, she did not do well on progesterone. She just felt horrible on it, but she is a patient who had a low progesterone. And so we had her be on compounded progesterone. We had the compounding pharmacy make a really pure version of progesterone for her. So once we got her MCAS and her inflammation under control, we went back down to the basics. We really took the time to work on her diet and figure out exactly what she needs so that she could be nutritive without flaring herself. And then we were able to add back some of her supplements and medications in a way that it was very pure and it wouldn't flare her. And then she was able to get pregnant. So the big thing is sometimes, you have prediabetes, you go on a prediabetes supplement, but you just do not feel good on it, even though that's what ChatGPT or TikTok says you should be on. The number one thing is that you need to listen to your body, okay? And sometimes we always talk about, more is not better. If you're taking all these supplements and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have no idea what's working. I don't really feel that good. Sometimes it's literally helpful just to go back to the beginning, okay? Cut everything out, go back to the basics, and then slowly reintroduce only the needed things one at a time so we can really see how you're feeling and make sure it's making you feel better and not worse. And then another really helpful thing, of course, is to document those types of things, right? So if your supplements are making you feel bad, we cut out your supplements and then we introduce them back one at a time, starting with the ones that are the most important for you. And then you just write down how you feel on that. If you feel okay, then we can add in another supplement. Food is the same. If you don't feel good, every time you eat something, we really go back to the basics and then we make a little plan of how we want to reintroduce the food. And if it's not sounding good, you cut it out and then we reintroduce a different type of food, okay? So signals that you want to pay attention to always in your body are your energy signals, right? Are you always tired? We want to look into, are you under fueling? Are we stressed out? Are we not getting sleep? Are we not getting the right amount of protein to nourish you? Are we missing something entirely, right? Do you have some chronic inflammation, some chronic exposures that are really burning off all of your energy? We really want to pay attention to our gut. It's extremely important. My goal for you is that you have a really healthy gut. You poop every single day. It's nice and soft. You don't feel bloated or gassy, okay? So really pay attention to your gut and specifically your stomach pains and your sense of feeling kind of blah, because sometimes we'll eat something and then a couple hours later we'll feel kind of blah. Just make sure you write that down so that you know that if you eat that thing in the future, is it related to that specific thing, or was there something else going on in your life that was contributing to that? And then we want to really pay attention to our stress levels, okay? We want to pay attention to our amount of anxiety. If we're feeling wired but tired, if we're feeling burnt out, like write down how stressed you are, anything that's triggering that stress, because really truly making sure that we're decreasing our anxiety, decreasing and managing our cortisol levels and our cortisol spikes is extremely important for our overall health. So number one, how to start just listening to our body, observe without judging it, okay? Like if you're having a painful cycle or if you're feeling stressed or feeling super anxious, it's not bad, okay? It's just information. It's your body telling you something. So you take that information and you make small little tweaks one at a time, okay? So track your simple patterns like your energy, your sleep, your cycle, your mood. You don't have to do it obsessively. You just want to be aware, okay? So maybe make a little habit at the end of the day. You would do a little symptom journal about how you felt that day, a little food log, anything that made you feel bad or anything that made you feel really good. And then just adjust gently, not dramatically, okay? Don't fix 20 things at once. Just work on one or two things at a time, okay? And then, of course, you have to give the feedback time to work, because sometimes we want to change a lot of things at one time, but do make sure you let your body have time to respond to its changes, okay? So if we haven't been paying attention to our bodies or we've been ignoring our bodies for a long time, of course, we're going to have to build that trust back and really get to know ourselves again and what it is that does make us feel truly, truly good. So listen to your body isn't just about quick fixes, right? Getting pregnant as fast as possible, healing our PCOS as quickly as possible, treating our endometriosis. It's literally about understanding how our bodies work so we can support it for the rest of our lives, right? We can chronically manage our inflammation. We can chronically manage our MCAS or our allergy flares or our histamine. We can chronically manage our gut. We can have an amazing, healthy pregnancy and postpartum. So our whole goal is that we feel amazing every day. We live excellent, long lives, and we understand our body and what it's telling us. And we know that when we're feeling something, this is what we need to do in order to feel better. And rooting for you. I hope you feel amazing. If you need help literally listening to your body, figuring out its cues, please don't hesitate to contact me or one of my other providers on our team. We really can help you walk through some of these things about, okay, what are the cues of your body telling you? And we also do just cycle tracking sessions to literally learn about those cues of your body and what's normal and what isn't, right? Like what is normal cervical mucus and what isn't? What is a painful cycle? What isn't? What is normal PMS symptoms? What isn't? So if you're not sure where to start, just start with a cycle tracking session. And that's the first step to learning about your body. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Hormone Café. Stay tuned for our next episode.